I've mentioned this, I feel like every week, every one of like Mizzou's games and problems that we've seen are fixable. Like there's nothing on this team that you're like, oh, this is I don't know if they can get around this. It's incredibly fixable. Brady's problems, incredibly fixable. The offensive problems, incredibly fixable. The penalties,
secondary.
Yes, fixable. Everything is fixable.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Hello and welcome into Mizzou That's Who, your podcast for Missouri athletics here on KC Sports Network. I'm Tucker Franklin, joined as always by Maggie Johnson. It's coming off a Boston College win. Missouri get a ranked win against the Boston College Eagles. Maggie, how was your time at the game? How was Columbia?
It was great. I mean, I hate those early starts, but they gave us 45 minutes. They did give us 45 minutes. 11.
It's a weird start time.
Very weird start time. I was a little nervous before the game because I just go into most games being kind of nervous. But honestly, like once the game started, even though we were down, I never really felt like we were out. And I think, I think the rest of the crowd felt the same way as me because it was very energized during the entire game. We were the better team. So yeah, it was a good Saturday for me. And you know what? I can't remember what player said it on their mini movie, but the best thing about going 3-0 is you can go 4-0. And I loved that. So, had to share it on here.
It's good. I mean, it's a good saying, and it's hard to win all the games if you don't win the next one, right? So that's a me one. You can write that down. You guys can use that one in the future one for free. But no, a great game. I mean, I did the post-game podcast after the fact, giving my kind of instant reaction on the Boston College game. I think Boston College is a lot better than people think they are. I know there was a lot of national podcasts and people being like, I think Boston College was overrated heading into that game. And maybe a little bit. Maybe they weren't the 24th best team in the country, but I still think that they are a top 35, 40 team in the country. Like, I think that they're in there, and I think that they're a well-coached, good football team. The only real plays, and I made this point too, Maggie, I'm curious what you saw at the game. The only real plays of offense that Boston College had were both busted plays. Two of the touchdown at the end was a busted coverage, and then obviously the big play that was so weird on so many levels. It was such a Mizzou play, honestly, of a fumble happening, and then you feeling like it's going to be a negative play for the defense, and all of a sudden it's a big play for the offense. That just really felt like a Mizzou of the past play. Those two things also very fixable. So nothing was sounding alarm bells, especially defensively. I think the defense looked really good. Made some adjustments early to keep Castellanos more in the pocket. Overall, really, really stoked at the defensive performance.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the front seven played awesome. I do agree. I think that the secondary was a little bit of the issue. But, I mean, you look at that play, and what is your instinct when a quarterback fumbles the ball? It's to go for the ball. So I don't blame a young player like Marvin Burks for kind of, leaving this spot. And I think Drayden Norwood also, went up there, and those are the two guys that, they kind of, the offensive players kind of blew by and were wide open. It's learning, right? I think it was Marvin Burks on the last play as well that kind of got burned in that busted coverage. So that's just things that's why you play the games in September, to be honest with you. And I'm not saying that this was an easy team, because Boston College was probably a tougher opponent than most of our listeners. Even, you and I kind of talked about how we thought it was going to be kind of a tougher game. Yeah. But it's just things you've got to work out. We have a new DC. So those are just kinks. They're just kinks. Right. Marvin Burks is a great player. He's going to be fine. The secondary is going to be fine. It's actually one of our stronger, we thought at least was one of our stronger positions on the field. But yeah, I'm not too worried about that moving forward. I think we've got a fast secondary, so I think we'll be okay.
And here's the thing about this game, too. This is the first time that Missouri starters played a whole game. If you think about how Missouri has been building up to this game, Luther Burden didn't play a whole lot in the first 2 weeks of the season.
I think he sat out 5 quarters. Honestly, I think he has sat out 5 quarters total of the season.
And it's like that for both sides of the ball. The offensive and defensive starters hadn't really played a whole lot. So naturally, there's a little bit of rust there. And we saw him shake it off towards the end. I do think that last touchdown was a bit cosmetic from Boston College, made it look closer than it really was. Missouri did get the ball, didn't give it back. That's a point I made on the podcast, on the postgame show, that I thought was a very good sign for the offense, is they get the ball back with about 5 minutes left and then don't give it back. That was a big drive from the offense there. The defense, again, just shaking some rust off. I do think that Vanderbilt is not as good as Boston College. We've said that. Vanderbilt losing to Georgia State, which we'll get into Vanderbilt here in a little bit. But I thought this was really interesting, courtesy of the game notes from the Missouri Sports Information Department. Tigers recorded their first game with multiple interceptions since October 14th of 2023 at Kentucky. So first game with 2 interceptions, 2 very big interceptions. The Trevez Johnson interception, I think, really changed the momentum of that game. They just scored, and Mizzou had just scored, right, or just got 3 or something like that. They gave the ball back to Boston College, which, like, 2 plays later, Thomas Castellanos throws that interception. And look, if he hits that deep pass, like, I think it's a good play call by Boston College there, because they know they have to get some momentum back, but instead, he makes one of his very, very few mistakes Thomas Castellanos has made this season. That is one of probably 2 mistakes that he has made against this Missouri Tigers defense. First interception for him and his 4th of his collegiate career for Trevez Johnson. Huge momentum changer. And it kind of set the tone. Drayden Norwood, we got the second one, and that was his first interception since 2022 against South Carolina. So some big performances there from the secondary. Look, some injuries heading into like this Vanderbilt game. Trevez Johnson might be playing a whole lot more, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Let's flip to the offensive side of the ball, Maggie, because look, I think that people do have some gripes with Brady Cook's accuracy, and he might be one of the most polarizing Mizzou players, because if you look at his statistics, and I had tweeted this out, he's the second Mizzou quarterback ever to log more than 7,000 passing yards and 1,000 rushing yards in a career, with Brad Smith. You look at where he's at in the all-time passing charts, like his all-time passing ranks, he just passed Jeff Handy and James Franklin for 4th most. Like, the only ones above him are Drew Lock, Chase Daniel, and Brad Smith. He's up there with the best quarterbacks in Missouri history. People don't talk about him like that.
You know, I think a lot of it, we have to put a little bit of blame on the pass blocking on the offensive line, because it's a position that it needs to improve. Run blocking, great.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Great, honestly.
Very well. Yeah.
Yeah. Brady's kind of forced into those quick throws, and when he's having to wait a little bit longer for the play to develop, he's not really being given the chance to do so. And look, like 21 for 30, 264 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions. That's not a terrible day.
No.
The problem is that he's sitting kind of stagnant. Like, he's not, you're not seeing that improvement that you saw in 2023. Like, you saw those early games and they were a struggle. And they were a struggle all over the field. But then something happens and he just made those connections. I said this last week. They have that chemistry. He knows how to throw the football. I don't think that he's going backwards. I think maybe it's just a bit of a confidence thing. But the reason he's up there with those superstar quarterbacks that Mizzou has had is because he's able to save himself with his feet, with his legs. Like, he is fast, he's quick, agile. I love what he brings. If he can just get that long pass, I don't see how Mizzou's going to be stopped on offense.
Right.
I think even without that long pass, though, against Vanderbilt, he's probably going to be okay. But I would like to see it happen, because I watched a little bit of the Georgia State Vanderbilt game. They honestly beat them all over the field. I mean, Georgia State beat them in the run game, the short pass game, the long pass game. But if Theo, Luther, Marquise can just beat that secondary, that pass, it's going to be open. So we've just got to get Brady to make those connections.
You mentioned Brady Cook's feet, and I think that's a really good point to mention, because it almost seems like he's better throwing the football when he's running it. I know that doesn't like make any sense, but it seems like you look at the games where he has a lot of those rushing yards and those rushing touchdowns, he connects on those deep balls. And we saw that a lot. He gets a lot more comfortable. He just looked uncomfortable in the pocket. From what I could see, he was even on like out routes. Now, granted, this is a out route on the opposite side of the field when he's on the far hash. That's a tough throw. That's a far throw. it's just not on target. And I think it is because he is a little uncomfortable back there in the pocket. You got to settle him down. And I think a way to settle him down is to run him a little bit more on these designed runs. And a stat that's also here in the game notes, he had a rushing touchdown, obviously, in the third quarter. Mizzou put out a video of him juking out a bunch of people. I thought that was kind of funny.
That was funny.
He that is his 13th career game with a passing and a rushing touchdown. That moves him within one of tying Mizzou's all-time record of 14 games in a career. That's Corby Jones and Brad Smith. Again, not really talked about in the conversation of those guys either. So I think it's very likely that he gets 2 games with a rushing and a passing touchdown. Like, that is clearly on the table, and he'll be the all-time getter of that stat. And I think that's one of the things that's really interesting to me, because when you look at statistically where he ranks up there with the best quarterbacks, some of the best quarterbacks in Mizzou history, but he is, I think Missouri fans out of this game, like, saw the most negative Twitter interactions about Brady Cook in some time after this game. And granted, if they connect on 1 or 2 of those deep balls against Buffalo or against Murray State, it feels a little bit better. But the fact that it hasn't happened yet, and it's been like Luther Burden 5-yard out, and then him making some guys miss doing Luther Burden stuff, right? I think that's kind of how Matt Miller said it on Twitter, Luther Burden doing Luther Burden stuff. He just kind of negates all of that, right? You just give the ball to him, and it's just like, okay, he's going to fix things. Just being a better athlete. But I do think it's one of those things, too, and we can talk about the Luther Burden usage a little bit in this game, because he doesn't get his first touch until like 8 minutes left in the first half. And a lot of people were griping on Twitter about that, too. And I do think Drinkwitz made a good point of, like, if it was not if he didn't get his first touch in the first half, it would have been a little bit more concerning. But, Boston College had a decently long first drive. The first drive for Mizzou didn't end like they kind of wanted it to. He doesn't get his first touch until then. I wasn't necessarily worried about it. I know people were freaking out, but he still has 117 yards on the day, a touchdown. He's going to get his, and that's become really clear. But do love how the Mizzou offense kind of responded with some adversity.
Yeah, and again, with the whole Luther Burden thing, I get it. Put the ball in your best player's hands. I understand. But at this point in the season, like, I'm not saying he's not our best player. He's the best athlete on our team.
Oh, yeah.
But we're running the ball like crazy. Nate Noel had 22 carries for 121 yards. Like, that's what was working. And I understand it's not going to work every time, and you're going to have to go to those wide receivers, which Luther Burden's not the only wide receiver we have with talent. Obviously, he had the most yards, but you still had Mookie and Theo getting 55 and 53 yards, respectively. So we have other players. We're incorporating Brett Norfleet back into this system. Like, we can't give the ball to Luther every play. It's just not going to happen. And when you have guys like Nate Noel and Marcus Carroll finding those gaps, which I think one of the players, like, I think it may have been Nate, like, laughed about how he just saw the gaps because our offensive line is, run blocking so well and all of that. I think that's where the money was in that game. Like, it was open all the time. Kirby Moore went with it, and that's just what happens. It's true, yes. You give the ball to Luther, and he's going to get those yards after catch, and it's beautiful, and it's fun. Like, that spin out where he had his touchdown, like, it was beautiful, and, like, the crowd went crazy. Like, that is Luther Burden stuff, but when you have a talented offensive roster like we have, you got to put the ball in other people's hands so the defense can't cheat.
Right. And they're doing a really good job of that. And I even tweeted out, like, I know that Missouri has the best wide receiver room in the country, but they should probably run the football, because they were dominating on the line of scrimmage when it came to running the football. They were getting, it seemed like they were getting 6-7 yards a pop. It probably slowed down kind of later on in the game, but it seemed like, especially early on, they were dominating the line of scrimmage. They were running the football really effectively, and they can probably do that a lot against Vanderbilt, which we'll get into. But Maggie, first, we should probably take a break and tell about our friends at Home Field Apparel, rocking the hoodie again. Look, I told you guys, not ditching the hoodie until we lose. Even on the post-game shows, I'm rocking the hoodie. Even when it's going to be 90 degrees outside in Kansas City, I'm still wearing the hoodie. Maggie's got the crew deck on. Great crew deck. I love the little...
This is classic.
The faux emblem, because that's not actually the University of Missouri emblem.
No, it's a tiger.
They don't actually have the tiger in there. You know what? I think the University of Missouri should adopt that emblem, as that should be the official emblem.
This is a sweet emblem.
It's pretty cool.
I like it.
I'm a sucker for a Roundel logo, and that is a good one there at homefieldapparel.com. You can check them out. Get anything that you want from Missouri to Colorado School of Mines to Syracuse to Campbell. Yes, they got the Camels. UC Santa Barbara was a new one that they got out there. They also have hats out now, new corduroy hats you can go get to if you're into that. My head's too big for those, so I cannot wear a corduroy hat. My head is too big. You can go to homefieldapparel.com. Get 15% off your first order if you use the code Mizzou24. That's Mizzou24 at homefieldapparel.com. 15% off your first order. Maggie and I are going to take a break. When we get back on the other side, we're going to talk Mizzou Vandy on Ag Day coming up next.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your number one source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com. Wouldn't it be nice to have a wireless provider that's straight up, with no BS, no complicated bills, fees, or upcharges? Well, with Mint Mobile, you can say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at just $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. And if you're worried about losing your phone or phone number or contacts, with Mint Mobile you can bring all of that over to join Mint Mobile's plan. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for just $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and a new 3-month wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/KCSNMTW. That's mintmobile.com/KCSNMTW. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/KCSNMTW. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Back here on the Mizzou That's Who podcast. I said that weird.
Yeah,
Mizzou, that's Mizzou. Mizzou.
Like a restaurant.
There's no me in Mizzou. I'm doing a little bit of Tucker D. Franklin research department is at it right now. Because I'm curious, because I was talking about all those Brady Cook stats, and I was like, well, it feels like Brady Cook's been here for a long time. Maybe he just has all those because he's played a lot of career games. Maybe that's why he's at the top of this list. Maybe that's why people don't talk about him, because he is just played a bunch of games. You know, you could throw it out because he has, the COVID year and everything like that. No, that's not it. Because looking it up now, okay. Verdict's in. Brad Smith has played in 48 career games for the University of Missouri. Drew Lock played in 50. Chase Daniel played in 51. Brady Cook has played in 38. So he's on pace so what? It's 4. This is their 4th game of the season, right? So they probably have 10, 11 more games. Hopefully a lot more than that, but at least, if you count we'll say 10 more games. It's 48, but that would be less than those 3 guys have had. And he is in the conversation. So I thought that's such a good ad.
He's like a silent killer, kind of like James Franklin was.
Yeah.
Because James Franklin is definitely one of the most underrated quarterbacks that ever played. And I don't know what it is about him. Everybody says that. So, I guess he's not underrated if everybody says that. But I think it's just because you had guys with names like Chase Daniel and Blaine Gabbert and Drew Lock that you kind of just forget that everything that James Franklin did at Mizzou. So, I don't know. I think that Brady will still go down as maybe, a top, 7 quarterback, but he's got the stats to back it up.
He does. And that's the thing, too, is that, this is a legacy year for Brady Cook. There is a lot of legacy for this season for Brady Cook, and I think Brady knows that in terms of how he gets remembered at the University of Missouri. Big season for them, obviously, that starts with this game against Vanderbilt, kicking out SEC play 3:15 game on the SEC network. Once again, I think it's the same crew. At least Alyssa Lang is the same on this call at 3:15. Maggie, thoughts on that start time? Because I know it was a flex start time. It was either 2 or 3:15 or something like that, if I remember.
It's going to be another hot day. I think I saw 85, but in the middle of the day, that feels like 95. So
look, not a lot of cover you can get into under that stadium either.
No, it's just wide open. I was very hot last week. The only nice game we've really had was that Buffalo night game.
Yeah.
But no, I like that afternoon time slot. Most usually. I'm a little bit annoyed we keep being on SEC Network, but it's not like I'm watching it because I'm at the game, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I'm excited to get back there. We'll finally get a little bit of rest afterwards, but
true.
We got to win this game first. And
it is a very big one. Now, Missouri also longest winning streak in FBS, current FBS winning streak as they host the Vanderbilt Commodores at Faurot Field at Memorial Stadium. Winners of the last 7 games, they take it on. And also, they fell in the polls last week. We didn't mention that at the top of the show. It seems like the AP poll this year has been more reactionary than in years past. It seems like it's more of like a power rating, which like maybe it should be, right? Like maybe that's what it should be, more of a power rating than and like, oh, you didn't lose, so you don't move. I don't know.
Only 2 teams beat ranked teams this week, and it was Missouri and K-State. And yes, K-State dominated
Arizona's bad. I'm going to say
not good. They are not. And it was funny because they're a team that people I think saw would be similar to Mizzou in a very powerful offense with Fafita and T-Mac. But the problem with them is they have zero defense. Like, zero defense. So luckily Mizzou doesn't have that problem. But I'm not too worried about us dropping. Yes, I know it's Tennessee. Yada, yada, yada. Like, we don't like Tennessee. Most of the listeners here probably don't like Tennessee. They're judging them on beating Kent State by 70. Right. And they're kicking onside kicks up 30 points. It's ridiculous. Drink's never going to do that. No. Not even in those first 2 games where we were absolutely dominating. It just kind of is what it is at this point. Keep winning. You'll be where you're supposed to be. Because Tennessee plays Georgia and Alabama. You've got Oregon and Ohio State are playing. Penn State's going to, there's going to be some cannibalism. If you just win, we're going to be where we're supposed to be.
Yeah, that's the thing, too. Is like, I'm not worried about week 4 AP poll rating. It'll be okay.
What matters is the CFP ranking. Literally the only poll that matters at the end of the day. Right. We'll just take care of business.
Yeah, Missouri does lead this all-time series against Vanderbilt 11-4-1. They also, I saw this stat too. Eli Drinkwitz has the best winning percentage at home in Missouri history in terms of coaches. Let me see if I can find that again.
Doesn't surprise me that much.
23-7 record on Faurot Field. Eli Drinkwitz has compiled the best home winning percentage among all Missouri football coaches with at least 4 years at the helm. That's pretty impressive. I did not realize it was that. Like, I didn't realize they've only lost 7 games at home. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm actually some of them were pretty bad. Like the Tennessee in 2021. But right. Yeah, honestly, like most of the games we've gotten to celebrate when we've left for us since he has started. So yeah, it gives you, it gives you a little bit of hope for the future as well.
All right, let's talk about Vanderbilt a little bit. I was diving into it, as you mentioned, Maggie, at the top of the show. They did lose to Marcus Carroll's old team, Georgia State, the Panthers. They put it on them at Atlanta, which also, Georgia State plays at a baseball field. They play at old, what was it? Not Turner Field, because Turner Field's like the old one.
Was it SunTrust?
Yeah, SunTrust, I think is what they call it now. Yeah.
Baseball field,
There you go. It's the one that's right off the interstate. It's where they play at. Super interesting. They turned it into a baseball or a football field, but it's really a baseball field. That's where they play at. Different than Georgia Tech, who've had their stadium forever. But they lose it down in Atlanta, 36-32. A late touchdown from Georgia State gives them the win. But as we mentioned, defense of Vanderbilt not very good. Diego Pavia, the quarterback there, the transfer from New Mexico State, very big fan of him because he is just a
dog.
A dog is one way. Yeah, he is a dog. I will. Yes, he's a dog. He's also chaotic, and he's like also so fun to watch because he kind of reminds me of Sluka. I don't know if you watched the UNLV Kansas game. I was going back and forth. It was a good hate watch. If you guys are out there, better not talk too much about Kansas because we'll get in trouble.
We'll get in trouble.
We'll get in trouble again. It was a good hate watch to watch UNLV win that game, but Sluka for UNLV kind of reminds me a little bit of Diego Pavia because like it is a boom or bust. Like you're pulling the slot machine lever every time he gets the ball. Diego Pavia had 270 yards, 2 touchdowns in that game. But their defense did not help them out. They are not very good on that side of the ball.
No. And for everyone at home, Georgia State was up 22-10 in this game and let Vanderbilt climb back. And that's 22-10 at the end of the third. So going into the fourth, they were up. There were 36 total points scored in the fourth quarter. Like, it was all offense, 0 defense from either team, because Vanderbilt could have come back and won that game if they had a smidge of defense being played. I do know that they've had like a couple of guys out. I think on their defensive line. Not sure if they'll be back. But yeah, you talked a little bit about Diego Pavia. He was the 2023 Conference USA Player of the Year. Threw for 29, almost 3,000 yards and 26 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, which you don't love to see. But like you said, he is a chaotic quarterback. He actually almost plays better when he is in that chaotic,
he thrives in chaos.
Which is kind of just wild to me, because most guys like to sit in the pocket. Like, we kind of want Brady to have a little bit more time in the pocket, and they're probably like, just let the defenders come through. That's when he plays best. But yeah, like you said, had a decent game last week. Also rushed for 40 yards. He's similar to every quarterback we've seen this year, especially like Thomas Castellanos. Very, very similar. I think one of our keys to the game is just going to be controlling his quarterback play, trying to make him not play in chaos a little bit, don't let him get that edge on you. He will run the ball. So I think if we do a similar game plan to how we handled Castellanos, which I think we allowed Castellanos to rush for 16 yards, which is amazing.
It's impressive, yeah. Super impressive.
Yeah, great Corey Batoon game plan there. They had 49 total rush yards. Boston College did against Mizzou. So I think if you run maybe a similar game plan, that's how you're going to win. I think they'll be able to score. I don't think we'll have a trouble scoring. It's just making sure that we can contain Pavia.
I'm double checking this.
What are you double checking?
I don't know if Diego Pavia is their leading rusher on the season with 195 yards.
So either their rushing game's not very good. I mean, because 195 yards total.
Yeah, 195 yards.
It's not very good.
Now their second leading rusher has 167, which I think is their running back. But Diego Pavia also has more attempts than him. So
they run a lot of options and don't really take the option.
I mean, that's according to Missouri Sports and Information there. Yeah, I mean, that's right. That seems absurdly crazy to me, especially when you look at the Missouri rushing attack that has two guys, well, not quite to the 200 mark. Nate Noel has 242 yards on the ground. Really impressive. Also, Nate Noel is like 4th in rushing yards by FBS league active members. Tweeted that one out too. That was a good nugget from Mizzou Sports and Information. But 242 yards for Nate Noel, 45 carries, 30 carries for Marcus Carroll with 154 yards. So we mentioned Missouri has been running the ball a little bit more than maybe we had anticipated going into this year, just because of how stacked they are in wide receiver.
I'm wondering if one of their issues for Vanderbilt is their offensive line. So I was watching highlights. I was watching the highlights a little bit. First possession of the game, okay? He Pavia has the ball. He's gonna throw the ball, and their tackle just gets absolutely beat by their defensive end, and Pavia gets murdered. I mean, crushed, and fumbles the ball, and then Georgia State recovers. First, I mean, I think there's like 13 and a half minutes left, but I mean, it wasn't even close. This tackle had, I mean, it wasn't even his blind side. He may have been turned, but 3 steps on him. It was crazy. I just don't think that they might have the special pieces there, but I don't think that they have the trenches, SEC trench players.
Which I think is very fair. You look at just kind of the offensive ranks for both of these teams. Missouri's 18th in terms of just total offense. Vanderbilt's ranked 89th. So offensively, not the best, especially when it comes to just like efficiency. They are not very efficient on the offensive side of the ball, nor the defensive side of the ball. I was curious about some of the numbers, so I went to collegefootballinsiders.com. You can kind of see a little bit more of the advanced stats there. Parker Fleming does a good job putting this stuff out at Stats at War. You can go follow him there. Missouri is 7th in the country in terms of scoring efficiency. And I found that really interesting just because it feels like they haven't been that efficient, right? And like it feels like that they have been kind of struggling, just to kind of put it in perspective. And like in terms of EPA margin, they're 7th as well. So it's like they are doing good things. And EPA is a stat that is estimated points per attempt. And it's one of those things where it adjusts for competition as well. So it's a stat that adjusts for that, kind of an advanced metric that has kind of risen to prominence, especially in the NFL, now kind of making its way into the college game, just a way to kind of accurately measure how good a play is, right? Like I think they consider like a 3-yard rush, right? Like that doesn't really add a whole lot of expected points for either side, for the offense or the defense. If you're a defense, you want a negative number. Offense, you want that positive number. The Missouri's differential is 0.3, which is actually really good in terms of the differential between offense and defense, in terms of their EPA. So I think that's a really interesting one to watch. And look, if you look at all like the numbers, it is anticipated for Missouri to kind of roll in this game. The projected margin of this game is 22. I think you can get I think there's some 20 numbers out there if you're looking at
20 and a half today.
So if you're feeling good about the Missouri offense getting right against an SEC opponent, getting right against Vanderbilt here, maybe this is the game. Maybe this is where you lay that big number, because it looks like that the numbers, the advanced metrics, do like Missouri in this game by a lot.
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to have as many flubs as they had last week. I
agree.
I think they're going to fix those issues as long as, Brady needs to connect. Like, he needs to connect with Marquise and Theo deep. Theo on the sidelines typically is, what we see. But, that's a big key, to winning this game and putting it kind of out of reach. So are penalties. And can we talk about the 2nd and 57 from last week? Because I feel like we didn't even talk about that. And, 2nd and 59. 2nd and 59, my bad. We had just converted on a 3rd and 33 right before this happens.
Right.
So we had 10 penalties for 81 yards. That's a little bit worse than the week before, where we had 10 penalties for 80 yards. But those are things, some of those penalties are like Luther being a dummy.
Right. Yeah, you can't.
He had 2 penalties that series. One where he just ripped the mouthpiece out of the other guy's mouth and chucked it across the field. And then the other one, I think he threw the ball at a Boston College player's head, or something like, you just can't do that. You're not gonna put yourself in those situations. He took at least 3 points off the scoreboard for that one, because we were at the BC 38. So that's at least, you're at least in field goal range if you don't convert on that. But I think that they're going to be able to clean silly things like that up. I saw somebody saying that they should punish Luther Burden and he shouldn't play in the Vanderbilt game. I'm like, what are you talking about? Right. I'm like, you got teams who have players that aren't getting in trouble for driving 106 miles per hour and racing cars. I'm like, yes, it's boneheaded stuff and it does hurt your team, and that's something they need to talk about in the locker room. But not having Luther Burden play against an SEC team is absolutely asinine.
I did appreciate Eli Drinkwitz immediately getting into him, getting in the kitchen and laying into him. I don't know if you saw the replay of that on the TV. The TV caught it. It's probably a good thing the TV did catch it. It's like, hey, look, I know you're the best player in the country, but you can't be doing that. Those are penalties 10 times out of 10. Like, those will always be penalties. Those don't change. And he's honestly lucky he was able to stay in that game, because the second one should have been unsportsmanlike conduct too, and it should have tossed him out of the game. It was like he was just a personal foul. And 2 unsportsmanlike conducts will get you tossed, and those were within, a play of each other, right? It wasn't even a play in between, I don't think. And it was bad. But all the things, too, and penalties have been an issue. That's something that I think, again, as I've mentioned this, I feel like every week, every one of Mizzou's games and problems that we have seen are fixable. There's nothing on this team that you're like, oh, this I don't know if they can get around this. It's incredibly fixable. Brady's problems, incredibly fixable. The offensive problems, incredibly fixable. The penalties,
secondary.
yes, fixable. Everything is fixable. So, like, I'm not smashing the panic button. I'm not even looking at the panic button. I'm not worried about it all, really, very much when it comes down to just fixing these issues.
Really, very much.
Not really at all, very much. And Vanderbilt, I think, is a perfect team to have right now to get right. Like, I think this is a good get right game. You can get things going. You can maybe find some rhythm in terms of getting those big plays. Because, again, I'm going to go back to Parker Fleming, a stat that he has over there at the College Football Insiders is called echo rate. I was like, what is this echo rate stat that I'm seeing? He describes it as how often your offense or defense generates or allows a big play, touchdown, or first down inside the 40 of any given drive. So it's kind of like a big play rate, right? Like how often you allow a big play. And the defense for Vanderbilt, again, they allow a lot of big plays. 103rd in the country in echo rate, 52% in terms of big plays. So they allow a lot of big plays. This is an opportunity for Missouri to get behind the defense, get some big plays, get some momentum going. Again, like the Tigers in this one, just with how everything is shaken out in terms of numbers and just like eye test too, like what we've seen on the field too. Missouri is a far superior team than Vanderbilt.
Agree, and I think you look at those long passes. Brady's still very confident with his legs. We talked about his legs a little bit earlier. Very confident. I think he is struggling with the confidence in the long ball. He just needs one game where you're making those connections. That's what happened last year, basically. One game, make those connections, get everybody comfortable, and then I think it's not smooth sailing because the schedule really amps up, after the bye week. But they're going to feel just so much better going into that Texas A&M game if they already have that under control.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else on Vanderbilt you want to head to before we get to predictions?
No, I think we got it all.
That might be the most comprehensive Vanderbilt preview.
I went back and I hit penalties, containing the QB. Like, I think, like you said, everything is fixable. I can't think of anything. It's not like the talent isn't there. I think there's some teams, I'm not going to say any names, but some teams in the SEC that their offensive line's not going to get better. Right. Like, they can't get any better. I think we're okay in terms of the talent. It's just execution. Yeah.
I think that's a good spot to be in, truthfully, when it comes down to it. Do you want to give a score prediction for this game, Maggie?
I didn't even really think of one. I don't really like 20.5. But I also didn't like the first two game spreads. And I think the Buffalo spread was like literally right on. We won 38-0. I think it was 37.5. Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go with like 34. Let's go like 34-20. Or like, well, maybe not 20. 34-21, maybe like somewhere like right in that range. I think 20.5 is a little bit much, but I think 13.5 is like my money spot. So.
Yeah. I can see, again, like a cosmetic touchdown at the end to make it look a little bit closer than it really was when you're watching the game. Missouri kind of dominating on both sides of the ball. I do think that they probably I do think Missouri's defense is going to kind of right the wrongs of like the coverages in the past. So I think it's probably more of like a 35-10 is what I'm going to say in terms of this game, because I could see Missouri defense just coming out and being like, all right, they've had to deal with the scrambling quarterback. They've had to deal with the mobile quarterback. They've shown that they have the ability to, and Corey Batoon showed the ability to adjust too when his plan doesn't go to plan after the first or second drive. I thought that was really impressive. But I'll go with 35-10 looking at the projection here. 39.44 to 17.18 was, so it's like 40-17 is what the numbers have it down as. But football is played on the field, not on the spreadsheet. So we will see.
Not in the podcast. I don't know.
Or not in the podcast either, but we will see next week when it comes down to it. I'll have a post-game show for you after the fact of Missouri win or lose. I will be having a post-game show in your feed for you. So let's go do it for this week's edition of Mizzou. That's Who, your podcast from Missouri Athletics here on KC Sports Network. I'm Tucker Franklin. For Maggie Johnson, we will talk to you guys next week after Missouri Tigers win.